And I think one of the things that you talked about, which I think is really fascinating, is just, especially when you look at your children today, right, is this idea of that there's this paradox of choice, I like to call it, where there's so many choices. And one of the big points that you made is that, it was actually a pretty big struggle for you to make that first choice of a job. And again, as students think today, how you made that first choice, because I think that is one of the most difficult choices a student makes, because it feels kind of like the weight of the world's on them when they make that first decision.
So my advice to people now is very much, where are you going to have fun? First of all, and that's the people and the job and the perks, but really the people and the job first of all. And secondly, where are you going to learn things? Not only learn things which will be useful to in the future, but I think particularly where are you going to be able to learn how to learn? So don't pick the first job because you always wanted to do X and this is X. If it's only going to teach you X, I'm not quite as sure.
I think another one thing that you've talked a lot about, or not talked a lot, but I think is also very kind of important for students to think through. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, it was on LinkedIn, and you had this really interesting idea of that data, useful data actually comes in the form of stories, not statistics. And so I thought that was just a very interesting approach, whereas, a lot of the world is moving more quantitatively, but that the way information is shared still comes through like the oldest form of communication, which is story.
I think that's exactly right. I think there's a reason why it's the oldest form. And it's not unlike to draw that thread back to the interior design. It's like, if you're coming as a student to a job interview or a job choice, any wise employer is not expecting you to walk up and say, I know exactly what this job is and this is why I want this job, right? It's like, you'd be naive to think that someone who hasn't done it really knows it. So what's your story? What is the story you tell me that hooks me as to why we should employ you? And it's not a story of, it's not a hero's journey story, to be clear. I don't want to mislead that it's like, this is why I'm so great and why I should come to you. It's much more, you look at me on paper, you look at the data on me, the results and the tests. Maybe I've had to do a test for you and my experiences. No, but it's how do I explain that to you? And I think that employers are becoming much, much smarter actually at looking for the story, because in the old world, you take the CVs, you look at simple things like grades and did they have a summer internship and these kind of things. These are very imprecise. The grades are helpful, but they're individually imprecise forecasters of future success in the role. And they can only be a part of the picture. And so, I think storytelling and demonstrating thoughtfulness and keenness and purpose and motivation and resilience, these are really, really important.
And in those interviews themselves, I guess, are there any other things that you look for candidates, or is there any ones that have stuck out to you in over the course of your life of someone who's really, really blown away one of those interviews?
So I really like intellectual curiosity, and people who just sort of engage with a question in a very thoughtful way. Management consulting, professional services, but management consulting particularly, are famous for a certain style of interview question. And, you might get asked. Interview. Yeah, the case interview. And it might be a genuine business case. We're working with an airline to solve X, Y, Z, or it might be an estimation question. I was asked in my interviews how many tennis balls are sold in London every year, or how many tennis balls are there in London or something. And people think, oh, my God, this is like a catchy question or a quirky question. It's just, people are just looking to see how you think. And for many years, I did a case study which was around retail banking, like interacting with your checking account. And it was like, how much do you do online versus the ATM versus in the branch in person? And I mean, it's like not something where you can come out with me thinking, wow, no one's ever done that before. But I just really liked it when people engaged with it. And it didn't look like they were following a recipe. So quite often people will say, you've got to ask a question. So you could see a student thinking, I have to ask a question first. What is the question I'm going to ask? And I'm like, come on, this is a bit boring. It's the people who are like, oh, that's really interesting. So let me understand this a bit better. And like, it's just a conversation, but they're engaging in a curious way.
They create a story.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's one of the things I particularly look for. But I think each company will have its own things. I think in Oliver Wyman, we are looking for intellectual curiosity. We're looking for resilience. We're looking for breadth of skills. We're looking for people who are willing to really get down into analytical underpinnings for things. I think stories are data too, but also stories can be told on top of large quantities of data. And we tend to use quite a lot of data in some of our work.
How did mentorship shape your career through someone like Scott? And is there a difference between a professional mentor and a regular mentor? Like, and I don't know if Scott is the either or, but like something like that, where someone that helps your early career versus like, is there like a professional mentor that's a differentiator between those two things?
Yeah, I think mentorship is extremely important. And I'm also going to bring into the picture sponsorship. So the difference between mentorship and sponsorship is a mentor is someone who gives you advice and helps guide you, whereas a sponsor is someone who puts their power and their resources to work for you in rooms that you're not in. And a mentor can be a sponsor. Scott was a mentor and a sponsor for me, and he was also my boss for a long time. When I first started out, the leader of the practice area I was working in was a man called Davide Taliente, and he was so his form of mentorship, which I think has shaped me enormously, was sort of, he developed total belief, and he would push me into positions that were slightly beyond my comfort zone, but not beyond my breaking point. So we'd be going towards a client meeting, and he'd suddenly turn and go, right, you're driving. And okay, I'd done all the prep work, I'd written the document, but I was kind of expecting him to drive. No, I'm driving. Okay, you sink or you swim, but he's there to catch.